fans? Enjoying the new set? Yeah! So, with the new DC Cinematic Universe, we're going to get a lot more Batman features, and myself being a huge Batman fan, I thought about the best Batman stories, the comics, and even some of the animated movies based off those comics, and I thought, what would be the best ones, the best story arcs that I'd like to see eventually unfold on the big screen? We've seen interpretations of The Long Halloween. Batman v Superman seems to be taking a lot of inspiration from The Dark Knight Returns, written by Frank Miller. We got a lot of Year One with Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy of the origin story. We always get stories of Batman's first and last day on the job as the Caped Crusader. So what are 5 good stories that the future Ben Affleck Batman movies can go off of? Well, that's what I'm here today to discuss. What stories I think they should go with in terms of comics or other story arcs for Batman that don't have to deal with his beginning and his end. The nitty-gritty, the middle of his career, the good, hearty, meaty stuff. Well, at number 5, I'll go with the only one that's not actually from a specific comic arc, but instead is from the animated series, and that is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Now, Mask of the Phantasm was an animated movie that actually made its debut in theaters in 1992, and is the only Batman animated feature to ever be in the theaters. Other than that, they've been on home release on DVD and Blu-ray, etc. This movie is essentially one of the best iterations of Batman I've ever seen. It's the story of this new criminal comes to Gotham impersonating Batman and knocking off Gotham's biggest criminals. They are the Phantasm. They're this specter, this ghost that's haunting Gotham, and Batman is being framed for it because what is he? He's a specter, he's a ghost of Gotham. So with this big mix-up, Batman has to clear his name and figure out who this Phantasm is. While you get some interesting flashbacks, you get some origin story of Batman, but that's handled incredibly well. You even get some good romance with Batman, which is handled incredibly well. It's got a great cast of Batman and Alfred, obviously, and Mark Hamill comes back as Joker, as he's the quintessential Joker voice, but you have new characters like the Phantasm, who is just absolutely perfect, and a genuine twist as to who the character was once they lift off the mask. It's a great design, and I think it's a very good story that I would absolutely love to see a big screen adaptation of that story. At number 4, I'll go with Hush. The only problem that presents itself with Hush is, as you'll see, there's a lot of different characters involved. You got Batman, Catwoman, Alfred, Nightwing, Superman, Killer Croc, Poison Ivy, Joker, new guy Hush, Riddler, all these different people. So if you're going to make this movie happen, you kind of need to cut and splice who's important in this movie. So essentially what it is all these criminals are being manipulated to do certain tasks or chores by this unknown force, this guy named Hush. Now, I won't ruin who that is for you, but it's a new villain that we hadn't seen before up until that point, really pulling the strings, unlike we'd seen anything like that before, and it was an incredibly well-balanced cast. Like I said, there was a lot of characters, but the way that the comic treated it, everyone got their due diligence. They got their time in the sun. Yes, of course, Batman was the main character, but every character had their moment to shine in that arc, and they had a different spin on it. Even Joker, he's framed. It's not easy to play the Joker and manipulate him, but he's actually framed, and that makes for an interesting dynamic of someone was the boss of the Joker for a little bit. It's one of the most famous Batman comic arcs of all time, and I think it'd be perfect for a big screen adaptation. Now, at number 3, I'll go with the most unlikely on this list to actually happen. However, I do think it would be perfect for a big screen adaptation, and it is Batman Battle for the Cowl. In the events of Final Crisis, Batman has bit the dust. He's finally died, which in comic book terms means he goes back in time and has to work his way back through the time cycle to present-day Gotham. It's complicated, but that's the beginning of the story. It actually gets less complicated as time goes on. So what happens after Bruce Wayne passes on? Well, there's a big, huge turf war going on in Gotham as to who is the big guy on campus when it comes to the criminal underbelly. You have Two-Face and Penguin going at it and fighting. They are the dominant forces in the criminal underworld, and they want to establish dominance over the other. However, you got a whole bunch of smaller criminals vying for position and basically trying, all of them together, trying to be the big guy in Gotham. And since there's no Batman, there's no one to stop all this chaos and anarchy. So there's only one person that can stick up for Gotham, basically, and fill in the void of Batman now that Bruce Wayne is gone. And that's Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing. The problem is, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to fulfill this fatherly obligation that Bruce Wayne was. And so it's really this coming-of-age story of accepting responsibility, accepting his role. And I think that could be played perfectly, as he has to fight against basically his brothers to get this honor of being Batman, and an honor that he frankly doesn't even want. There are people that he's fighting against that do want this honor, but they know that they aren't the right ones for it, or they aren't what Batman stands for, and they're going out and killing other criminals. It'd be an interesting dynamic, one that we've never seen before, of, yes, you have someone different as Batman, and not Bruce Wayne, which could present some issues. However, with a new take and more of a family issue, more or less trying to save Gotham, and a new villain, newer to the film-going audience, with Black Mask being ultimately the one that's pulling the strings, it could be a new and fresh story, one that we haven't seen before in a Batman universe. Now, another newer story that's come out recently that I would love to see in a big screen adaptation for a number 2 spot is Batman Court/Night of the Owls. So what Court/Night of the Owls, it's a 2-parter, Court of the Owls and then Night of the Owls, is there's this sect, this underground cult in Gotham City that's been around for years that surprisingly Bruce Wayne knew nothing about, which is interesting because Bruce Wayne knows Gotham like the back of his own hand. He grew up there, he tries to know everything he can about the city to protect it better. However, this fairy tale, this legend that his parents warned him about when he was a kid comes forth, and there's this class of upper, wealthier people, and they have this assassin that's trying to take out Gotham's wealthiest that don't agree with their linings. So at the end of basically the story, it's Batman's family against the Owls family, and a bird-centered battle, which sounds dumb, but it actually works incredibly well. There's a cult that Batman is completely unaware of, literally under his nose and under the ground, which makes for a completely new story of we get to peel back Gotham and see this new intricate layer that's been around for hundreds of years before Batman. What's he going to do about it? Driving him to the point of near insanity, yet he's Batman, so he's ultimately going to prevail. So what's the one Batman story I want to see more than any other? I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before, but I want Batman Under the Red Hood for the number 1 story. And believe it or not, that sounds like it's going to be the story that they end up going with for the first Ben Affleck standalone movie. So what it is everything seems to be going right in Gotham. There's some criminal conflict. Of course, there's a turf war going on with, again, Black Mask, trying to establish dominance in Gotham. However, there's a new force in town called the Red Hood, who's essentially trying to do Batman's job, except with guns. He's not afraid to kill the people that aren't afraid. Now, Batman, of course, cannot stand for this, but when he eventually does some digging and find out who the Red Hood is, it's a great tragedy from his past. Now, it's essentially lumping together 2 different stories, Under the Red Hood and A Death in the Family, which was another fantastic and well-received and famous comic from the 1980s, which is essentially the death of the second Robin, Jason Todd. Now, this tragedy and Under the Red Hood intersect at a certain point, and it's all of Batman's worst nightmares and failures returning to him, and it's a very visceral family conflict as opposed to just another generic bad guy that Batman has to do battle with. It's an emotional, I have failed you and I need to redeem you, but you don't want to be redeemed and you want to kill me. It has a lot of interesting new characters that could be introduced into this world, like Black Mask, or Jared Leto's Joker would be fantastic because Joker is in this story, but not to a great extent. He's ultimately not the bad guy. That's Red Hood, who would be new to the audience, and if done correctly, could be sympathetic to an audience who, frankly, good villains are hard to come by. That's why we celebrate them. That's why characters like Kylo Ren were so well received, because they were more well-rounded than other villains. They were more sympathetic, and if done correctly, Red Hood can garner the same sympathy. And personally, one of my favorites, Nightwing, is in it, but in a perfect amount. He's in there to support Batman at times, but then once the emotional connection hits for Batman, it's become solely a Batman story. So what do you guys think? What Batman stories or arcs would you like to see on the big screen someday? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you see and you want to see more, subscribe to the channel, or find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at 17 Movie Reviews. Stay sharp, movie guys and gals!